everyone, this is Fawn, and today I wanted to talk about how to find the least restrictive environment in the school for your child. We'll talk about what the least restrictive environment means, and we will also talk about how to find that. And we are going to be bringing in quite a bit of the law today. So I just want to remind everybody, I'm not a lawyer, and you can absolutely look up these laws yourself. I will give you the section numbers, and I will even link the law below. All right, let's get started on the least restrictive environment. The term least restrictive environment is used in special education and has specific requirements attached to it and its meaning. Section 1412, subsection 5 of IDEA provides that students be taught in the least restrictive environment. This means they should be taught alongside their non-disabled peers and not in a separate setting whenever possible. The student should only be placed in a more restrictive environment when the severity or nature of the disability prevents it. This term has been misused by many school personnel and misunderstood by students' families. Okay, so first of all, let's go ahead and talk about what is the law behind this? What governs it, and what does it exactly say? So the term least restrictive environment appears 6 times in IDEA. IDEA, I-D-E-A, stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But it is defined best in section 1412, where the term itself is defined. This section defines what states must do to receive funding under IDEA. Section 1412, state eligibility. Subsection 5A, in general, to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are not disabled, and special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular educational environment occurs only when the nature or severity of the disability of a child is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Again, that is the quote directly from the law. Gruenhagen and Ross suggest that some ways to determine whether the placement of this student is the least restrictive environment might be the use of supplementary aids and services, educational and non-educational benefit, the effect of the child upon others, cost, and whether the student has been mainstreamed to the maximum extent possible when segregated placement is used. According to the Fort Law Group, LRE, or least restrictive environment, means that a child with a disability must be educated within the same classroom as typical mainstream non-disabled peers to the fullest extent possible in order to ensure that a disabled child is receiving a free and appropriate education, otherwise known as FAPE. Now, what is the least restrictive environment? There isn't one set of requirements that signals the least restrictive environment for a child. This is determined by the IEP team together. What the law does say very clearly is that if a child can be educated in a regular classroom with their peers, they should be placed in that classroom and have accommodations and modifications within that environment. The least restrictive environment means that children should be in regular general education classes for as much of their day as possible. This doesn't mean they need to be at the same academic level as their peers or that they don't need assistance. It means they can be in the same classroom as their peers while learning. It may be helpful to review demand avoidance and consider what struggles they are facing to come up with some ideas on how to keep them in the mainstream classroom. And I wrote an article on this, and I'll go ahead and link that down below. Now, let's talk about how to find the least restrictive environment for your child. When the IEP team meets, they need to decide what the least restrictive environment is. This means that the parents, teachers, and district must discuss what the child needs and find the best placement. Some questions to help the team find the least restrictive environment might be, in academics, you might ask, what modifications to the curriculum are needed? Modifications to the curriculum meaning changing the level of the materials, either up or down. What accommodations are needed to access the curriculum? Accommodations are how the material is presented. And what can be done to deliver these in a general education classroom setting. For related services, what cannot be delivered in the classroom? And this is where you would have push-out services. And what can be delivered in the general education classroom, which is known as push-in service. For behavioral needs, are the behavioral support needs? What of these needs can be delivered within the classroom? What cannot be delivered in the classroom? Is a staff member needed to support the child? So what you'll want to do is review what services listed above or additional services cannot be met in the general education classroom. What parts of the day can be spent in the general education classroom? And for other additional services, if an additional staff member was available for the child, would they be able to spend more time in the general education classroom, such as modifications, accommodations, behavioral, and more? Is there any assistive technology not currently being utilized that would allow access to the general education classroom? If you're unsure about assistive technology, request a consult from the assistive technology expert at the district. If the district does not have an assistive technology consultant, they can bring one in. The assistive technology consultant will observe the child in class and come up with ideas that you and the teachers may not have considered. So that is what the least restrictive environment is. And as you can tell, I have named my channel after this concept because I do think that it is really important that we have inclusive classroom settings. If we put all children with disabilities in a classroom away from other children, then how will they ever know how to interact with each other? This is a disservice not just for the disabled children, it's a disservice for the neurotypical children because they are never exposed to people that are different from themselves. If you have any questions or have ideas for additional videos I can do, please go ahead and use the comment section down below. And next time, thanks so much for listening today.